Hello, hello, everybody. We are continuing on with the YOUniverse fun. Today is all about sales and how to inject personal experience into your sales motion. So we'll go ahead and give folks a couple of minutes to join on, and then we will get on down to business. Yeah, hit us with some tunes, John.
Yeah, right. No, I'm not Flavor Flav. Let's put it that way.
Sadly.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, this is no when I'm not joking. Like this is part of the video. Hold on. Where's my virtual background? I had this when I did the webinar. Flavor
actual still.
Wow, that's amazing.
He literally gets on and it's like, yo, John, what's up, boy, man? And like, and he went on for like a solid 5 minutes. I was like, this is absolute gold right here.
Now I'm interested, John. I'm gonna have to look at Cameo and find out how much he is.
I bet she's like $15. Like,
not Amy, I'll Venmo you. I feel like it's not a lot.
Yeah, I gotta imagine Flavor Flav. There's not too much demand for Flavor Flav these days. And if you notice that picture, he's looking a little rough. So
he's been looking rough for a long time. So there's that. Yeah. And Nina, I know we're in a pandemic and times are hard, but I'm good, girl. Thank you. I appreciate it.
It needs $15.
I love it.
All right. So thank you for everybody who is dialing in, both our panelists and our attendees. But for those of you where this is your first YOUniverse session, we've actually been hosting a 3-day fun-filled virtual experience hosted by Alice. And really, we started off this week by putting together a whole bunch of programming that focused on who we are as people and really celebrating the things that fuel our 5 to 9 passions. Because at the end of the day, what inspires us in our 5 to 9 is actually what helps motivate and produce the output within our 9 to 5 demands. And so yesterday we kicked off our speaker series of YOUniverse, where we're inviting a ton of brilliant B2B minds in the sales and marketing and CS space to really come in and tell us a little bit more about what delivering a personal experience looks like within their sales, CS, and marketing teams. And so today I'm super excited to have some amazingly talented sales and revenue people to explain to us where really, we believe that, you know, in order to bond personally with your prospects and with your customers that you're trying to cultivate business relationships with, you really must be delivering a consistent experience that delivers on our 3 R's. We talk a lot about delivering an experience that's relevant, delivering an experience that's relatable, and delivering an experience, more importantly, that's respectful. So super excited to hand over the reins to my friend Amy, who is going to help us moderate this power panel today to really talk about how can we inject personal experience into our sales motions. So Amy, take it away.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Team Alice for including me. This is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. So welcome to People Buy From People, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be the MC with this fine panel of powerhouse folks. We are going to be talking about what it takes to adjust your selling approach to build an experience that's personal for your buyers and why it matters now. It always mattered, it will matter, but why now? And so before we get started in this really important discussion, a few housekeeping items. So for all of you that have asked, will this be recorded and can I get a copy of it? The answer is yes. So for anybody that registered, stand by post YOUniverse. This will be coming your way. Also, please utilize the chat to submit questions in the last 15 minutes of the session. We will open the chat feature up then, and we'll be saving that last 15 to answer as many of your questions as possible. Also, from a streaming experience in the spirit of second to none experience, we've muted you all. Sorry, you can't talk out loud. So now let's get to the lovely panel here and get to know each other a bit better. YOUniverse is all about celebrating people's, not just 9 to 5, but also what happens after the fact, from 5 to 9 plus, as I like to call it. So for me, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on me. But it should be known that I'm as tone deaf as it gets. And this morning, you can ask my husband, who was like, is there a cat in heat in our house? Like, what's going on? I was singing to some Harry Styles and I loved it, and I will not apologize for it. So fun facts on yours truly. But without further ado, let's talk about the panel. So Mark Ebert, avid runner, father of 3 youngins, outdoor enthusiast, skier. I have to ask you, Mark, are you powder or ice?
Well, skiing in New England, it's mostly ice.
Nice.
Right on. Right. That's actually where I learned to ski, so I totally get it. And as a VP of sales, Mark is responsible for leading all of 6th Sense sales and business development teams. He hails out of Boston and is passionate veteran of the sales enterprise MarTech ad tech space with over 12 years experience helping businesses leverage tech to achieve real measurable results. Prior to life at 6th Sense, he spent the last 6 years with Responsys and later the Oracle Marketing Cloud, working with their enterprise sales division in both sales and sales leadership. And prior to Responsys, Mark spent 6 years with the Experian Marketing Services team. So I feel like, Mark, you're going to have a whole lot to talk about when it comes to this panel and topic. Next up, thank you for being here. Christina, co-founder at Cupcake Mojo. Okay, so I've seen you socially talk about this, and I have to ask you, out of all the things that you're baking, what's your favorite flavor?
I'm a huge fan of salty sweet, so I would have to say like peanut butter and chocolate combination. It's a winner.
Yes. How many flavors do you have, by the way?
It changes daily. Obviously things have changed since there's no longer walk-in business, but there's about 20 daily flavors, and then we'll have a rotating menu of an additional 10 monthly flavors.
Yum. And I haven't had lunch, so my mouth is officially watering. And when you're not whipping up all these tasty treats, you are managing the commercial sales team at Smartsheet. So excited to have you here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Mr. John Barrows, who I feel like I know really, really well. And we were talking about some of your painting skills with your whiteboard wall. I have to ask you, knowing how much you care about spending time with your family and painting, what is the last thing that you painted, not your daughter?
My entire basement. So art was my first major. We have a Halloween party every year. It's an unfinished basement, so I painted the entire thing with flames and witches and goblins, and literally you walk into my basement and it's Halloween all year round. So that's what I painted.
The Dungeon of Gloom. I'm not sure. Gloom. I'm not sure what's happening there. I like it. I need a picture of that. That's awesome.
I will find one and I'll bring it up. So
that's great. And maybe Flavor Flav on the wall too. I don't know. I'm just saying. And John is the owner and CEO at J. Barrows Sales Training. So excited to have you, John. Thank you. Thank you.
To be here. Yeah, thanks for having me.
You are welcome. Darien, Sacco. So you talk about reporting to 2 adorable micromanagers that are 5 and 1 or almost 1. What are their names and how are they micromanaging you? What's one of the things that they do to micromanage you every day? We need to hear about this for all the parents that are in quarantine right now.
Yes, so I'm sure plenty of people can relate. So we have Dean, he is my son who is 5, and Dessa, my daughter, who will be 1 next month. And I can't forget we have a boxer who will be 10 next month as well. But they're very demanding of my time. So we're doing things to, try to balance the best we can. But there's a lot of specific needs for any 5-year-old, as I'm sure people are aware. So, crust has to be cut off just right, and things have to be placed a certain way around the house. So, I do the best I can, but I can't meet all of the requirements. So,
but you work hard at it.
Yes.
And when you're not having fun with all of that, you are managing business development at Kronos. So really excited to have you and your perspective today. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next up, my girl, Becc Holland, who is a jump rope champ, which I don't even know exactly how to think about that. How does one get that title? Like, what is that? Could you please expand?
All this is needed for the explanation of this is I believe that I did not fill out the actual portion of 5 to 9. And so poor Alice and the team over there put jump rope champ because I mentioned it in an intro call, but I literally have jump roped in my life, I think 3 times.
So we'll take that title away from you, sadly.
I should be dethroned for sure.
But now you have goals. So there's that, right?
Yeah.
And I'd be surprised if people don't know you, but for those that don't, you are heading sales development at Chorus.ai. And this, I know, is a topic that is so near and dear to your heart, and I cannot wait to hear what's in store from your point of view. So thank you.
No, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You're welcome. And last up, Mr. Ed Calnan. Thank you. Husband and dad to 2 teenage sons, which we were talking about before this. You hail out of Boston and fan of live music. I have to ask you, what was the last show that you saw before pandemic?
So I had tickets to see Pearl Jam at Madison Square Garden on the 30th of March, which was postponed, unfortunately. Before that, took both sons to see Wu-Tang Clan in Boston in August last year. So
I don't know what to do with that. But rock on, I like it. So with that said, I'm like, wait, I'm processing you at a Wu-Tang Clan and then at Pearl Jam. So all the thoughts are happening. But you are the co-founder and CRO at Seismic, where you lead the company's go-to-market efforts. You bring more than 20 plus years of sales leadership experience from places like ADP, Thomson Financial, S&P, and EMC. And you bring that to Seismic. So in 2016, you were named a top Boston startup founder over 40 by Tech.co. So you're going to have so much to bring to this, and thank you so much. So without further ado, let's dig in, shall we? So I think we all realize fundamentally how we sell has to change, especially with what's happening in our world. And creating second to none moments for our buyers that, to Nina's point earlier, that are relevant, relatable, and respectable is key. It's always been key in my mind, but especially key today. So thinking about people buying from people, and that's the spirit of this panel, why is this such a hot topic beyond pandemic? And when all of you think about this, how are you thinking about it for your businesses? So Ed, I'm going to start with you. And I'd love to know what you think about this for your business, or how you're thinking about this for your business.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's, I think given the recent events of the pandemic, it's just highlighted the importance of a topic that a lot of us have known was really important for a long, long time. And, you know, at Seismic, we're all about storytelling. And we feel like if you can tell the right stories to help people relate to a challenge they're trying to solve, then you're probably going to be in pretty good shape. So me personally, I've always believed that people do buy from people. And I tell my team that, you know, people don't buy because they like you, but you want to get the relationship to the point where if you're not in the boardroom and they're making a selection on a vendor, that if all things are equal and you've done your job, that some people around that table want you to win. And, you know, I think it's more important now than ever, with budgets being shelved, that we tell personalized stories to help prospects understand how to fix their business challenges.
Becc, I would love your insight on this. How are you thinking about it at Chorus.ai? You always think about it, but how are you thinking about it now?
Yeah, so I mean, personalization is definitely, it's a hot topic right now. And really, whenever I started doing like personalization at scale, it was out of necessity. You know, at the end of the day, I'm a practitioner, and I knew that most people were sending out some kind of relevant, you know, buyer persona messaging. And that was where they were like extending their personalization. They had viewed personalization as like, okay, it's either down to technographic setup or demographic setup of, you know, what the person's role is, or some kind of firmographic setup of like company size, industry. But I really wanted to extend into psychographic personalization. How can I tease something out about that? Like, you know, put Amy's business aside and Amy's role aside. What if I could tease out something that Amy said, did, or engaged with that was really relevant to my company? So, really, I think, COVID has done, one thing. It said like, okay, now we have to be personalized more than ever. But I think when I think down to personalization, when I think to your statement of people buying from people, it's like, at the end of the day, they don't necessarily want to know all these wonderful facts about you. They want you to be transparent with them. They want you to answer their questions. They want you to be bold enough to approach the question of pricing. But they also want you to deliver to them some kind of personalized buying experience, whether that was inbound or outbound. They're very, very different. Have some kind of clarity of how your product would help their business. And I think that really gets them in the right realm to think like, okay, this salesperson has done their research enough to where I'm willing to trust that they understand me. So I think the CMO of Lyft said it on LinkedIn one time that kind of wraps up my feeling like, if you want 15 minutes of my time, give me 5 of yours first by knowing who I am and doing the due diligence to research what I've done in my career so that, I can entrust those 15 minutes with you and make sure that that's a good use of my time.
There's that saying, show me, you know me, right? So what you put in is what you get out. Mr. Barrows, what are you thinking over there on the topic?
Oh, whole bunch of stuff. Well, I think, Becc hit it with personalization and then relevant, but I think we have yes, but both of them are critical, right? Because you can't be personalized without being relevant, right? The problem with personalization is if you just personalize and it's not relevant to me, I don't care. So you could go on my website all day long or my LinkedIn profile and say, hey, John, I see you went to University of Maryland. Good for you. You know what I mean? But then if you hard cut into some irrelevant value, that's what I'm seeing too much of right now, which is something personalized, but then a hard cut to something that's irrelevant. So now we have to do both. And people are talking about empathy right now. There's a big danger right now, and this aligns with personalization. There's a big danger right now of fake empathy. Like about 6 weeks ago, I put a post out there, stop with the templated cadences, and I didn't say stop with cadences. I said, stop with the templated cadences. Right. And I said, look, lead with empathy, hey, I hope you and your family are doing well, that type of thing. Cause know what's going on right now. And then less than 2 days later, 3 days later, every single email that got in my inbox started with, I hope you and your family are doing well. And then cut to some piece of shit value proposition. And that, again, that had nothing to do with me. And so now I hope you and your family are doing well. Look, if we know it, like Amy, right? We're talking, hey, Amy, how's the family? How you doing? That's different, right? Because we know each other. Yeah. But as a cold outreach, hey, I hope you and your family are doing well. That people are grasping and trying to hold on to that, to think that's personalized, that's showing empathy. And the way I think you show empathy right now is not. I think that's fake empathy. I think that actually does more harm than good at this point. I think personalization and relevance equals empathy, right? Because empathy is all about putting yourself in that person's shoes, trying to understand their situation, not only from a persona standpoint, as Becc said, but also from a personal standpoint and what their business is going through. So if you can make that connection to say, hey, I saw this, I saw you said this, I saw whatever that is. And the reason that I wanted to reach out to you is because I got something here that aligns with that. And if you can't do that, if you can't tie relevance to personalization, then you could still probably reach out at this point to just let them know, hey, what's up? But don't ask. Don't say, hey, hope you and your family are doing well. I'd like to talk to you about this great software development thing that I have, and da-da-da-da. Just fine. Just be like, hey, I saw you did a work from home policy. It looks like you're unfortunately having to lay off some people. I hope everything's going well for you. Here's some resources. Good luck with everything. But don't want to talk to me if you can't be relevant right now.
I had a conversation with someone that was like, if you have to think about empathy, being human, or being genuine or authentic, all these words that are flying around, if you have to think about that as a strategy, you've already lost coming out of the gates. Okay. So, Christina, I heard you laughing. I'd love to hear what you're thinking about over there on this.
Yeah, when I think about the topic of people buying from people, that's something that's been around for a while, right? You think about, not to say back in the day, but back in the day when people would sell, right? They'd take somebody out to a steak dinner, or they would send them a bottle of wine in the mail, even if somebody may not even like a bottle of wine. It was all about the sales rep winning the deal. And I think now it's completely different, right? Everybody talks about this, there's a shift in the way that people are buying. And sales reps, but also customers are just more comfortable being who they are. Like, I walk into the office, like people have tattoos, like maybe everybody's not buttoned up. Obviously you need to look presentable, but I just think we live in a world, like, first of all, it's 2020, and like people are just more comfortable actually being who they are. And you, in sales, whoever you are, sales or marketing, right? Like, you just need to be aware of that when you do outreach. Sometimes it almost, because it's so expected at this point to be personal and to be who you are, that if you reach out and you're insensitive, or you send somebody, like, not to be on the topic of Alice, but if you send somebody a bottle of wine and they don't even drink, like, that's so not personal. So yeah,
or
I
even
just
worse,
think,
might be an alcoholic. I mean, on that
right.
one,
No,
right?
seriously. Like, it's just, I think that, John, just touching on what you were saying, like, if you can almost hurt yourself if you do I'm just going to copy and paste one line into outreach and then leave the rest of my pitch there. It almost is worse than if you had just sent whatever you had before.
Can I just a real quick on that, because this is very, like, hey, how you doing today? On the call, stop. I'm begging anybody listening right now, stop with your phone calls to cold people saying, hi, how are you today? Because you have no idea how good somebody is actually doing.
Yeah.
I mean, people's emotions are all over the place right now. You could cut somebody. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I'm a pretty even keel dude. I don't let the highs get too high, lows get too low. But over the past 2 months, I've been so high and so low in such short periods of time, I can't even see straight. It's like in the morning, I'm like, I'm getting after it, right? And all of a sudden, getting like, oh, budget freeze for one of my clients. And oh man, what happened? And oh, my buddy's in sick. You catch me at the wrong time, and you might get Boston John punching you square in the face, telling you to go, pound sand, because you're like, hey, how you doing today, John? Actually, I'm doing miserable. What are you going to do with that? So going back to what Christina said, it's like, you got to be very careful with fake personalization, fake empathy right now.
So from Boston John to Mark Ebert, how are you thinking about this for your business?
Yeah, well, we sell a lot in the enterprise space, and we talk about trying to think of what's not been mentioned, but one thing that comes to mind is the idea of outreach right now, with under the theme of people buy from people, is I think insensitive outreach is where you're not recognizing that people are also insanely busy, and that people should absolutely they owe you a meeting. And hey, I sell some cool software. Like, you're an idiot if you don't take a meeting with me right now. But it couldn't be farther from the truth. So we do a lot of testing, like, hey, we should never, ever reach out to somebody unless we have like a pretty baked perspective of why it's probably a good time. And like, timing is big in our business. And if you can't answer the question of what's your perspective on why it's a good time, then you shouldn't reach out. And so we kind of battle test each other on that with our outreach. And then the other kind of thought is, especially the bigger kind of deals that you're selling, you're kicking off what is a partnership between a bunch of people. And we hear enough from Gartner and Forrester about how big these buying committees are, but the reality is that there are a lot of people involved in a partnership once, you as a sales rep do your job. And you better damn well like each other. And so you spend a lot of time together. And there's nothing worse than, thinking that you're going to make a partnership happen when you can't stand to be, around each other. So phase one, another way we test how our first meetings go is, how likely are they to want to just spend more time with you? It's simple, temperature check. Like, did you add value? Do they want to spend time with you? Or were you annoying, not listening? They can't wait to get you off the phone. You're dead in the water. So yeah, a couple perspectives there, but yeah, like, we have to like each other because we're about to spend a ton of time together, and we better trust each other too.
Well, there's that old adage of people buy from people that they know, like, and trust, right? So back to those basics. And before we dig into the next question, Darien, I'd love to hear about it from your vantage point, how you're thinking about this for your team and your business.
Yeah, so I think echoing a lot of what everyone has said, we basically have to skip steps now and get to the point faster, because time really is tough, and there's going to be a lot more scrutiny around budgets, right? People aren't going to have the same kind of bandwidth that they had before. A lot of companies are in the same spot where they're really dialing stuff back and, you know, pulling the reins on. So I think that you have to go in, you have to personalize. We know that, right? But I go both ways, John, with what you were saying with the how are you doing now. We've actually had success. If you're genuine in asking that question, we've had people break down in tears on the phone and talk about it. And, you know, if you're actually genuinely going to listen to that person, provide some sort of comfort, you know, that does lend you to potential business or meetings down the road. But you're doing the fake empathy, which I have seen so much of, right? And I think we are definitely in a spot where you have to remove the, I hope you and your family are doing well line. I do think it served a purpose. I think it made sense in the first couple of weeks of this. Yep. I think it's good timing. Now it's like, you're right. It's just, that's basically now the template. You know, all right, we're past that. So move on and find some other way to personalize. And I think it can go beyond even, you know, if you find, hey, I see you like Pearl Jam or whatever it might be, also looking at the person's style, right? If you see their posts, are they long? Are they sharing stories about what's happening in their day-to-day and tying that back in? Or short, sweet, to the point, get the message out there, trying to sort of match and mirror in that way as well. Just anything you can do to really grab someone, because time is tight for everyone now. Everyone is busy, so we really have to hone in as best we can there.
So thinking about that, right? Like when I'm thinking about it, it's getting the door open or getting it slammed in your face. And everything that all of us are doing inside of our businesses, people are watching now more than ever. Right. And what you choose to do, and more importantly, how you choose to do it, is going to determine what happens next. So even if you're not selling right now and revenue is down, or you're experiencing sort of like that V, here's the fun part. What you do today absolutely shapes going ahead. So I want to dig into that of opening doors or shutting doors when it comes to outreach. And we talked about, each one of you has sort of themes to that through your insight. When you think about outreach, we've all seen, my LinkedIn feed is filled with it. My Twitter is filled with it, that our sales brethren, are being slammed by icky outreach that they're doing, whether it's in-mails, whether it's emails, whatever it might be, whether it's calls, I don't care. People are getting skewered. So I'd like to open up the conversation to talk about good cold outreach behavior you've seen, and when your reps are getting the response rates that you want to see, and they're opening those doors and they're having thoughtful, productive conversations. And really the catalyst there, why is it different? What did they do? How is this impactful? And how are you replicating that for your team? So whoever wants to dig in on that, I feel like Becc, I want to start with you for whatever the reason is. I know what that reason is, but I think you've got a lot to say here and a lot of concrete examples, because you've been talking about this and you went on a 14-day roadshow about this. You've got a lot to bring to the table here.
That was annoying, right? I don't know why I did that. I just wanted to be.
I wasn't on the bus. I wasn't annoyed. I don't know. Let's ask, Josh Braun and everyone else. I'm not sure.
Don't ask them. I was delightful all 16 days. Yeah, when I'm thinking about quality outreach, it's like there's two things in my head. It's like personalization and relevance. Personalization without relevance, and someone likes you because you said a nice fact about them, but they won't buy from you because they don't think that you can do anything for them. Relevance without personalization, they might buy some from you, but you're not really different and you can't really stand out. And so when I'm thinking about how to really resonate with someone, you have to find a way to incorporate both. So I think I've gotten the tagline of like, oh, this is personalization girl, because I was the one to take a shot on goal to scale it. But, I'm like, really the keys to the kingdom is hooking both, in my opinion. And the interesting thing, I put out those videos and I got, a bunch of different outreach of people saying like, hey, I 2X, 3X, 4X quota because I deployed your method. And I said, hey, if you don't mind, that's amazing. Congratulations. If you don't mind, me asking, what kind of, like, can you send me one of the emails that you sent? And so they would send them over and I looked at them and I'm like, off record, I was encouraging, but I was like, on a scale of 1 to 10, this is probably like a 3. This isn't that good of a message, but you've just tapped into something, you know, which is personalization, which hadn't been done before, you know? So it's like, you know, what that really communicates to me is one really, really encouraging fact for, you know, everyone on the line. It's like the bar is so low, you know, that it's very, very easy to step over it in this day and age. So it's like, if you do something different, and I have the luxury of working for, you know, I work for a sales effectiveness platform, right? So essentially the produce should be good sales outreach. So it's the luxury of knowing that in terms of buyer persona, and I'm selling into VPs of sales. But the other piece is that's a really high responsibility of like, if our outreach isn't really, really high quality, if our outreach isn't doing something that hasn't been done before, then they say like, how am I supposed to believe that Chorus can help my salespeople if you're not good on the phone? You know, so when I think about really high quality outreach, it's always reps that are doing both of those pieces naturally, of like, they're understanding who Mark is, they're understanding who Ed is. You know, he's a CRO at Seismic, here's everything that he's done in his past, and these are the things he probably cares about. So when I get that one shot, if I have 30 seconds with Ed, I'm going to say something different to him, you know, than any other rep has said out there, in the hopes that it piques his interest just long enough to do a buyer persona 30-second commercial. And I'll kind of end my tirade with this. It's like, I had a rep, you know, on the team over at Chorus, and he's like, hey, can I talk to you? I'm like, walk and talk, baby, walk and talk. And he's like, yeah. So I jumped on the phone and, well, this person hung up on me. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, yeah, they just hung up. I'm like, oh, Chris, they're going to do so much worse to you in your career. I'm like, he had never come across someone hanging up on him. And if I had to guess, this is an intro level rep. This is someone who's 22, 23, you know, whatever. And he had never run into it because he was hitting them with that ammo right after that. How have you been? You know, and they're like, who the hell is this? And he's like, hey, I saw you wrote this article, and one line that stood out to me, and trying to hook it into this value prop with an upfront contract. And so, you know, I have to think that it's less of a personality thing. And the really encouraging thing is like, you know, we've got so much green space here of what we can really do with outreach to bring it back into the quality realm and say like, okay, like John said, it's like, enough with the templates, enough with the cadences, enough with the sequences. Not that sales engagement is bad. It's actually really helpful. It's not deleterious. You know, it's an aid, but how can we really deploy this in a thought-provoking way, in a meaningful way, that whenever my 22, 23, 24, 25 best case scenario year old rep gets in the room with the CRO from Seismic, or the CRO from, you know, whoever, Oracle, or VP of sales from Intel, they say something that's really, really thought-provoking and hits that nail on the head of the 3 R's that Alice said earlier, of like, that last one I really, really loved is like, respectful. Am I respectful enough to be prepared and know what I'm going to say to this person to not waste their time?
So let's think about that further, right? So, and I want to get a little specific here in the sense that the impetus of all of this is personal versus personalization. And I think when you're getting personal with people, it's layers deeper than just personalized. Like, Amy, I saw you went to Kent State University and you talked about wanting to be James Bond. Did you watch the last James Bond movie? Like, that doesn't mean anything to me. Like, you're wasting my time. What? If you tie that back to something that I'm going through, and I live out loud on social, right? It's easy to connect. If people can't connect the dots with me, there's a problem. But it's all about connecting the dots to get to that. So like, I think you can skim on the surface, but the magic happens when you can get layers deeper. And so I want to steer this to just not just about personalized outreach, but I want to talk about getting personal. And I'd love to hear specific examples that you're seeing that your team is doing that's working really well, because our community is getting slammed. I would love to learn by example from what you guys are seeing that's working really well out there. So whoever wants to raise their hand and jump into that pond, let's get deep, let's get personal, all the feels, snuggle up. Come on now, sharing's caring. John, get into it.
Video. I'll be very specific. The thing that's working for us, empathy. How do you show empathy? You show it. So, you know, there's this Albert Munchin, whatever the guy's name is, about how we communicate or how we read emotion, right? 8, 35, 57. 8% is the words, 35% is the tonality, and 57% is body language, right? So right now, our highest conversion ratio for our personas, VPs of sales, CROs, and VPs of enablement, is LinkedIn videos. So what we do is we go on and we actually, you know, very targeted list. We go and we socially stalk people, but then like go on there, you know, share their stuff. Don't just like their stuff, but share it, make a comment to it, right? Have some insight in there. Then we link into that. We send them a nice little personalized message to saying, hey, saw your recent post, thought it was really interesting. Would love to see more of your stuff in our feed. And then we see if they connect. And then after they connect, we then go back onto LinkedIn to try to find something to make a connection to, ideally something that they posted on about, you know, what their company is going through, what their reps are going through, some of the challenges that they have, and then just light up a quick little video on LinkedIn and just say, hey, you know, I saw that just happened. You know what I mean? And to me, I don't know. I think I love being personal and I love personalizing, but I do think it's a bit of a fool's errand right now to try to be too personal, because again, you're walking such a tight line there of hitting it out the park versus whatever. I see you went to, you know what I mean? So
you could waste time doing that too.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. It's like all of a sudden, 45 minutes later. What's that?
I'm cracking the MC whip. Give me an example. Like, not just like we have a persona and we do this. Like, I want a concrete example of this is how we did the video. This was the connective tissue, and this was the hook. Let's talk about that. And John, doesn't have to be you.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to share that.
Yep.
Let's talk about how you're connecting those dots, because that's really, at the end of the day, it's all about dot connection to open the door or get it closed.
I'm trying to think of some examples that happened last week. Well, I think of that. Hold on. I'll find some. Hold on.
I have, I mean, it might not be exactly what you're looking for, but I just think a quick example of, I'm going to talk about video because I'm super passionate about video in the sales process. And I'm going to go back to what I said before, like it's 2020, that you have to be doing things differently. And it's not just the video that increases conversion rates. Like, right, anybody could sit there and be like, hey, I'm Christina. And you could actually blast out the same video to 1,000 people.
Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. Please don't do that. But the thing is like, what we're talking about here are like different ways to do outreach. And a lot of people will write an email for like 20, 30 minutes long, trying to get personal, trying to say the right thing, trying to be like super strategic, but it's arguably less time to just hop on a quick video, be who you are, stand out a little bit. And then if you want to talk about somebody's LinkedIn profile, like Amy, if I were to reach out to you, instead of writing you an email being like, hey, I was just on your LinkedIn profile, why not just show a video of your LinkedIn profile and then I'm talking in the bottom right-hand corner? Like, hey, I couldn't help but reach out to you. I'm actually on your LinkedIn profile right now, and then go into a little bit of a pitch and then pivot into what's relevant, why you got there. I think like showing the work you're putting in, that's what it's all about. It's like, don't just say it, show somebody that you're on their website, you're on their LinkedIn, like you looked up an article. I think if we can do more of that, you're more apt to get someone to be like, oh wow, like they really are on my LinkedIn profile right now. They were like, and that will shock people a little bit.
We I'll share, because we do use Alice as a part of like our process, and what we focus on is like we talk to our sales team a lot. You don't have to sell to every single account in your territory to hit your number. And nor should you expect that every account in your territory needs to buy from you. Your job as a sales rep is to find the ones that are likely needing what you sell and find them at the right time. And that's when they're going to be more apt to meet with you, right? So earlier we talked about timing, and it's kind of the business that we're in at 6 Sense, but we fundamentally believe like we're publishing a book, like no cold calls. We should not, like, you shouldn't be cold calling anymore. That term should be in the past pretty soon. But what we do is if we know when is a good time, and there's tools out there to know, hey, when companies are likely in market, and you hit them with a good personalized outreach with a perspective on how you can help and why you think it's relevant now. And then I think like the last cap that we're trying to train a lot more on is, it's a really great experience if you have that first meeting and the sales rep is very open to recognizing with the buyer that, look, let's decide at the end of this whether or not it makes sense to spend more time together. And there's a high likelihood it's not, but letting them know that it's okay, that it might not be good. And what I think people are getting really soured on the sales process now is that salespeople just think that everyone should buy whatever it is that you have to sell, as opposed it should be flipped completely upside down, right? And it becomes a much better experience. So we think a lot about it as timing, and then relevancy with your outreach, with the perspective on why now, why meet, and then always have that first meeting experience be left with, like, it's perfectly okay if this isn't right for you, know when to challenge, but also like take the weight off the buyer for a second, and just know that we're out there trying to find the companies that genuinely need what we have to offer, not that I'm trying to force, whatever it is that we have to sell down every single prospect's throat. It makes for a much better experience.
So Mark, you mentioned a really important thing that I think we all need to talk about here, a mindset shift to the buyer, less about what I want and what I think is great and more about them. And I'm a big believer that it starts from the top down, and you're talking to your team about this. You believe in this. It's coming from you. So for all of you in leadership roles, right? How are you thinking about this in terms of creating that culture to get personal, to think about personalization, to connect those dots, to illuminate conversation? And I'm going to use Drift's tagline, meet your buyers where they are versus where you want them to be. How are you guys creating that inside of your organizations?
I'll take a lob at this. So empathy is defined as the ability to understand the feelings of another, to understand and share in those feelings. And so when it comes to a buyer journey and meeting a buyer where they're at, I think that you should split them up into 3 different prongs. Of like, you have outbound buyers where you're really hunting after someone, okay, this is this whale that I really want to go after. You have who is typically uneducated about what your product does, or, how you can help an organization or a person like them. You have an inbound, lead, that's someone who's saying like, okay, I've done, all of my research beforehand. I think Forrester published a study on all the things that people consider before buying something and reaching out for a demo. And it's like, they think about thought leaders in the space and what they're saying. They think about peer-to-peer, and they think about like reviews on Trust Radius or G2. But kind of to Mark's platform's point, like, people are doing more research than ever before, and what Sixth Sense would call the dark funnel, of like, they're understanding what your product is doing before they're reaching out. And then you have like postbound efforts. That's everything in between true inbound and outbound. It's like content downloads, webinar registrants, event attendees, firmographic triggers through Crunchbase, like IPO or company funding, or, dark funnel providers like G2, Trust Radius, Sixth Sense, just to name a few. But I think understanding those 3 buyer journeys from a high level and personalization are actually 2 different topics. I only apply personalization from an outbound perspective because this is someone that I'm entrusted with striking a rapport right off the bat. But someone who's coming inbound, given, Sixth Sense research and trusty providers like that, it's like, okay, they know who my product, like, they know who my company is, they know who Chorus is, they know who Gong is, they know who Exec Vision is. They're really, thinking about who's the best fit for my organization. So from the inbound model, it's like, okay, how do I just get this person to a demo if they're qualified? And like understanding that buyer journey of like, a demo for an inbound prospect is going to be someone who's much, much more educated. And if we're careful enough, it's going to be very different from an outbound demo of someone that we sought after, and even content. So I'm thinking through those 3 different buyer journeys, and like, from an inbound perspective, how does my AE hold a demo in a way that's like, okay, let's get into the nitty gritty, a lot less discovery on the prospect. I mean, again, we have the pain in the ass of selling into sales. So when we try and discover on our VPs of sales, they're like, I wrote the book on MedPick, Medic, Challenger, Sandler, MJ Hoffman, like, you name it, they've been through it, force management. So it's like, if we try to discover, an inbound lead, they're going to spit in our face and say like, hey dude, I came in here to talk about these 3 things. And if you don't answer this question about pricing, I'm walking because I don't trust you. So it's like that journey versus someone, who's on the line in terms of outbound. It's like, I've had AEs jump on calls and be like, okay, well, first let's talk about your organization. Why did you show up here for this demo of Chorus, Gong, whatever? And they're like, well, I don't know what I don't know. It's because it's a very, very different call in nature. And so I think understanding from the buyer journey, and also, you know, personalization, again, it's just a tool. It's just a tool in the tool, you know, toolbox of many. But I think that really the impetus and the genesis of really, really good quality buyer experience is understanding, okay, you don't have to like get too granular and too in the weeds and understand every single prospect, what are they going through? But by and large, my inbound prospects have usually done these 10 steps of research, you know, via the Forrester study of like, they've understood who my competitors are, they've understood the reviews and read all the Glassdoor or whatever, like they're just really typically looking for these 3 things. But from outbound, we need to do a much more educational playbook, and we need to help them understand, like, you know, by and large, I'm seeing VPs of sales say X, Y, and Z, you know, and these are 3 things that they're thinking about that are top of mind that resonate with you, and going a little bit deeper. But I think understanding that they're 2 very, very different journeys is at the heart of, you know, really being, you know, entering into whatever empathy is these days. People are like to John's point, it's like, okay, I hope you're good during COVID. It's like, well, what next? Okay, yeah, my kids are, you know, if I had them, or my family is fine, like just like everyone else. It sucks, it's a pandemic. Most of us don't have that great of advice because it's the first time it's ever happened in the world, you know. But it's like, okay, once that happens, like, how can I understand, you know, I'm like, from a high level, I've told my you know, SDRs and reps over here, I'm like, hey, guys, their objections are going to be realer than ever, okay? You know, usually they're going to be 95-5 ruled, they're going to have some kind of false objection, but when they say, hey, I just laid off 300 people, the answer is to hang up the phone. You know, it's like, okay, if the answer, like, if I'm in events management, it's like the answer is to not call into them. You know, so it's like, there's been several different measures that we've taken from an industry perspective to understand, like, let's leave events alone right now. And let's pivot Chorus to not how we can make your sellers better, but how can we make your sellers remote better? Because I'm like, right now, the variable that has changed for them is remote. So let's put down the tired out playbook of how we can make everyone say all these magical words that will make them buy your product. Let's talk about everything of, like, for a field sales rep in Oracle who's gone door to door, you know, every single day in his 30-day career, how can we teach him or help him understand how the hell is he going to sell in a remote environment? And how is our product is just the bat. Babe Ruth wasn't good because of a bat. It was good because of his technique and how he was swinging it. So how can we enable sellers in this kind of environment is where, you know, the org is at as a whole, for me at least.
Ed, what do you think about that from the CRO lens? And just a reminder here, we're nearing the end of our time together. The chat is open for questions, but one of the questions that I just glanced at was, would love to hear about this from your perspective as a CRO and founder. So how do you feel about all this?
Well, you know, I've said for a long time, I think most salespeople suck. And I fully believe that. I've been at this for a long time, and there's a very small percentage of people in our industry that are really, really good at their professions. And I think largely it's because a lot of the comments that we've heard, you know, I think Mark summed it up really well, talking about finding the buyers when they're ready. In fact, you know, gave some great examples about, you know, engaging at the right time and the method of engaging. And it drives me crazy as a CRO when I get an email from someone, and I pay attention. I believe in karma, and I believe that there's a sales karma in our industry and in the universe. And so when people cold call me, I try to take the cold calls, and I try to respond to emails, and I try to respond to LinkedIn outreach, only because I remember I was the first BDR at Seismic 10 years ago in my attic by myself. And you know, I'm empathetic to those kids trying to do their best to get hung up on for the first time and are trying to find their way in our crazy industry. It drives me crazy when I get emails that say, are you interested in learning about how to solve these problems? Like, I said it to our team all the time, like, we're not selling long distance service, and we're not selling cable TV, and we sell business to business software. We should know who our buyers are. We should know who our target accounts are, and we should tell them why they should take a meeting with us, and ask them if the time is right. And if the time is right, great. We should prove to them why we can help them. But this isn't, you know, if we're doing our jobs correctly, this is not a hey, Darien, I would love to talk to you if you have 10 minutes. It's, hey, Darien, I know that this is who you are, and I want to make a connection with you, and I know this is your job, and here are 5 reasons why, if you have a conversation with me, I'm going to help improve your business, and you're going to have a shot at getting promoted. I mean, that's personalized, right? It's not about what kind of wine you like and that your kids play, youth soccer might open the door, but people give a shit about, do you understand my business? How are you going to make it better? And if I solve a bunch of big problems at my company, what does that mean for me? Am I going to get a raise next year? Am I going to get more equity, or am I going to get promoted? That's personalized outreach that is the most important, especially in a noisy environment like today.
Well, and let's tie it back. People buy for a few different reasons, or they respond because you're going to help me get better, you're going to help me solve a problem, or you're going to help me achieve a goal. And if you can't do one of those 3 things, go back and do your homework. Questions are starting to roll in. So one of the questions that came up is, should we be selling to companies that are in survival mode? What's the message to them versus pivoting entirely to industries which are still solid or growing? Who wants to take that one?
I'll jump in there. I think that right now, I mean, at least the approach that we're taking, I'm in specifically the manufacturing space. So we have, about half and half. There are companies that are completely shut down right now. Nobody's working. And then others that are, of course, manufacturing essential devices and whatnot, and they're going strong. But at the end of the day, I don't think anyone in that current situation is really in a position to maybe start on a new buying process right now, right? But half of that group has time to do some research and have a conversation. And I think this is a really important time to start building rapport with them. So you're probably not jumping in with your sales pitch, right? But it is a good chance to start a conversation and be super transparent. You can be more transparent now than ever, in my opinion, because you can say, hey, this is an unprecedented time. None of us have gone through this before. I want to be respectful of the situation that you're, I'm trying to keep things moving along on my side. I'm sure you guys would like to do the same on your side. There's a level of normalcy that I think people are appreciative of, right? Just because you're maybe not in your typical office or, running the environment that you're used to, there's still a lot that's going to have to be done. Things will pick back up. You've got to keep moving. So how are you keeping that conversation going and being there to help them with that process and almost a guide or an advisor? So I wouldn't ignore them because realistically, they have enough of being ignored right now. If they're, in this survival mode, I think they would probably appreciate knowing that maybe it won't be now, but down the line, we'll be here to help. And we have faith that you'll still be there, for us to help you.
Darien, I think that's, you mentioned like the beginning of that, talking about, learning, and we've seen kind of like the proliferation of learning during the time. So like companies that are locked down, they don't stop working, but they are changing what they're focused on. So, if we're reaching out to companies in survival mode, the messaging that's working better for us is really like, hey, we recognize now is not the time to be buying, but if you're interested in using the time to learn, we'd love to share. And it's like share mode. Like companies are down to learn. You might not get it this quarter, but you want the sale eventually. Tee yourself up to be the rep that stands out, that added value. And I think so that's a good point, but it's been interesting, like the proliferation of learning. Like I actually got an Alice gift from another prospect around like a masterclass gift card to like learn something new while you're at home like that. I think a lot of people are taking this time to figure out, all right, well, now's my time to do research. Now's my time to learn. And sure, if you're willing to share and step off, like take your foot off the gas on like close mode and not be annoying, I'll spend the time, right? If it's relevant. It's a good call, Darien.
So question came in, does anyone have any data about outbound campaigns before and after COVID and how they are pivoting based on this data? Like concrete numbers in one strategy change, actual tactic.
I do, that's what I was looking up. So the three things that we've done is reposition our value prop to all remote. We've trimmed out all of the companies that are, you know, to Darien's point, like in a downturn during the time, and said, okay, this is an education model, you know, for later, but this, we aren't going to hard sell right now. We don't want to blow our foot off for the future. And then we've, the third thing is we've done what's called, I call the push-pull method, of where at the end of the line, you know, your CTA typically is the last line of like, if you give me a shot Wednesday at 3, blah, blah, to unpack how, yada, yada. We're saying either way, such a big fan of your content, you know, keep the good stuff coming and hope you're safe during this time, you know, because like in my experience, if you mention COVID, then everyone thinks that you're monetizing a pandemic. You don't mention COVID, they think you're an insensitive asshole. So it's like, okay, how can we lie in between? And like, this isn't my go-to-market. Of mentioning COVID isn't my go-to-market for the breadth of my email, but to Frank's questions on the data, typically for an outbound personalized or the outbound sequence that we're running, we're spending 5 minutes at the beginning to research the prospect, to pull 5 premises that will fuel a 16-step sequence over 21 days. You know, so we are getting out on average 25 100% tailored emails and 52 dials per day for the reps, even given, you know, the personalization. And we had typically a 24% positive response rate. I mean, we're cutting down our volume a little bit, you know, from like industry normal, but we took a 24% response rate. We dipped down to an 18% response rate during COVID. And when I put in those 3 that I just suggested, we went back up to a 21% positive response rate on the first trigger email.
So this is so great, and time flies when we're having fun. There are a lot of questions that came in and they're really good. And I wish that we had more time. And I feel like with this incredible lineup of sales leaders and revenue leaders, we could talk about this way, 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 way longer than an hour. So
Amy, can I make one suggestion real quick?
Yep.
We talk a lot as leaders and sales reps about what we think is going to resonate with our clients right now. I want to give a recommendation to everybody out there. All of your customers right now, they don't want to see you go out of business, okay? Because presumably they get value out of what you do. So instead of guessing what your prospects care about, now's the time to go deep with your customers. Go get your customer success people, set up a panel like this, have your 5 personas that are using your stuff right now. Have your sales leader interview those 5 or 6 personas of your existing customers and have all your reps listen to it and ask the questions. What messaging would work right now? What questions are relevant to ask? What content could I share with you? So we're putting together a board of advisors for the 3 different personas we go after: CROs, VPs of sales, and VPs of enablement. And we're creating messaging that we think resonates with where we are right now. But before we go ahead and put that into a sequence or a cadence, we're then giving it to those board of advisors and saying, hey, look, would this work? Right? Would you respond to this? Are these your priorities right now? That type of stuff, and getting their feedback so they can help us, because they want to see us be successful. And then we take that, then we put it into a sequence or a cadence, and then we let it go. That's the best way to do it. Stop guessing right now, right? Go talk to people who already are using your stuff and like your stuff and want to see you be successful.
Right on, John. I mean, understanding versus assumption. There's such a big difference there, and this is a great time to snuggle up with your customers. For those that aren't getting on the phone and having conversations, by show of hands on the panel, does anybody disagree with that as a great strategy? Exactly. So that is wonderful, tactical, actionable advice, Mr. Barrows, on the way out. And I want to thank Mark, Christina, John, Darien, Becc, and Ed for spending the afternoon with me and audience. Hopefully today's discussion has left all of you thinking about how to infuse the ABPs, always be personal, of selling into your sales culture and process. As a reminder, we will absolutely be sharing this session with the recording for anybody that's registered and joined us. Don't forget to tune in to YOUniverse tomorrow at 12 Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific for From Trade Show to Trade WOA. So thank you again. I believe all of you are on LinkedIn because I'm connected with all of you. So any questions that we did not answer, I would imagine that it's okay if people reach out to talk shop.
Absolutely.
All right.
Of course.
Thanks everybody so much. This was wonderful. And I've learned from all of you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you all very, very, very much. It was a treat and a privilege to get to host you on YOUniverse, and keep spreading the good word when it comes to establishing what your businesses are doing right and trying to steer away from where brands are going wrong when it comes to delivering a personal experience and selling. So thank you all.
Thanks, Nina.
Bye.
Bye.